Hi, and welcome back to In the Hot Seat with Emily Diala and Dr. Viviana Coles. I'm Emily, and this is Dr. Coles.
Hi.
And in case you're just joining us, be sure to scroll back and take a look through some of the other series we've done. So far, we've done a series on sexual desire. We've looked at different kinds of relationships and how they influence and impact sex. We have done a series on affairs and infidelity. And today we're going to start a new series on sex addiction or sexual compulsivity or problematic sexual behavior. And I say that
things we just don't like.
Yes. So I say that because there's a lot of labels for it, and we're going to talk about some of the differences today. So we are excited that you're joining us.
So some of the things that we'll touch on, and again, we don't want you to get caught up in the language because you're going to hear all sorts of stuff on the internet, with professionals in the field, from partners, from people who are treatment professionals, about what constitutes problematic sexual behavior, and they might use words like addiction, like compulsivity, and so don't get caught up in the language. The theme of what we're going to be talking about is things that are going on either for an individual or within a relationship that have to do with sexuality that are problematic to that person or to the relationship.
Exactly.
And as you can imagine, that's like
all over.
Yeah,
so
and
big. It's really
so
about, we're looking at different sexual behaviors usually that have become expressed. So a desire is maybe something that you want to do or you think about doing, and usually people begin to have a problem when the behavior is expressed. So that's what we're going to talk about. That
part of your life.
Yeah.
One of the big ones that we can start off with is pornography or erotica.
Yes.
And most people tend to have a stance on feelings about pornography. But I mean,
a lot of times they don't talk about it.
They don't talk about it, or it's a gray area when we're talking about what constitutes pornography. But in general, explicit visual representations, audio representations, or literature that are for the purpose of creating a sexual arousal response.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when we talk about pornography, typically with clients who are experiencing problems with it, a lot of it has to do with their partner's feelings about the use or their own feeling like it's too frequent.
Right.
It's just too much, and it's becoming more of a habit than something like an escape for sexual release.
Right. So, I'm not anti-porn at all. There are plenty of, I think neither of us are anti-porn at all. There are plenty of people who use porn in a perfectly healthy way. What I try to help couples understand is when it is becoming a problem for the relationship, and I also try to help them peel back the layers as to why. Is it something that goes against your moral compass? Is it detracting from your partner's sexuality? Is it, taking your partner away from time you think they should be spending with their family?
Is it creating too much of a fantasy to where reality just doesn't do it for you?
Right. And I think that's part of the problems I see sometimes with people who were, raised on pretty hardcore internet porn and have limited interactions with people in real life, just in relationships or sexually, and then they're trying to engage sexually with their partner, and it's like the wires get crossed.
The wires get crossed. Their brains and their bodies are so used to a certain type of stimulation that can't be replicated in real life, either legally or it's just not possible. But when you mentioned something about when a partner has maybe a moral issue with pornography.
Right.
I find, and I'm typically a little bit surprised, because even with couples who communicate really openly and really well, that this is a topic that people kind of have a hard line, and once it's mentioned once by their partner that they're not okay with it, then they never bring it up again. And they either continue to use it in secret, or they decide not to use it at all, even though they really don't feel like it's a problem.
Right. I am of the belief that there's a difference between privacy and secrecy. I really am of the belief that we are entitled to have an individual sexuality that may be kept private. Some aspects of it may be kept private from our partner, and that goes on to maybe there's a specific fantasy that you have that you don't want to share with your partner, or maybe, the kind of porn you're looking at, you don't want to, spell out for your partner exactly what that is. And I think that can be okay. But it's a fine line between privacy and when it comes into secrecy. I think a good question to ask yourself is, how would I feel if my partner were doing this and I didn't know about it? That question alone can give a lot of perspective.
And the other thing is, when it comes to pornography, we don't want to always lump it in with masturbation. Yeah. There are two different things. Some people view pornography just for the sake of getting that stimulation, but they're not necessarily viewing pornography all day long and masturbating all day long. Right. Those can be two different things. Now, oftentimes, when we're talking about masturbation, when people say it's a problem, is if they're doing it in places where they could get caught and have serious legal issues or professional problems that come as a result. Or if they feel, like what you mentioned earlier, it's taking away from their ability to perform with their partner.
Yeah. Or not even just from the performance model. Is it taking the place of partnered sex altogether, which is...
That's the part that I think most partners are afraid of and threatened by.
Exactly. And I do think that, crosses the line into something that's problematic, because I think most people would agree that, when you're in a marriage, that sex is part of that relationship. And so it can feel really devastating to a partner when they desire you, but you're choosing instead to masturbate to online porn instead of engaging with them sexually. And so that's where it gets into that.
And we don't typically see the people who don't have a problem and tend to be able to have a nice combination of both partnered experiences and solo experiences. But what tends to come into my office is this idea that I have found that when I masturbate in a way that makes it to where I don't have the same arousal response. I don't have the same feelings and sensations when I'm with, let's say, a woman, a female partner whose vagina does not feel like my fist. Yeah. We obviously have the training to talk to them about what they can do and some mechanisms and strategies for being able to retrain their bodies on using masturbation in a healthier way that mimics the sexual partnered response, partnered experience.
But it's not just the the way that they're masturbating to online porn. If you think about porn, it's a very or masturbating to online porn, I should say. It's a very dissociative experience. Rarely do people masturbate to online porn and feel very connected to their bodies and to their physical experience. Sometimes what they're doing is keeping themselves in a high state of arousal for a long time and maybe clicking around different websites, and that can definitely create problems. Furthermore, porn is solely visual, or maybe there's an audio component, whereas when you're with a live person, all five senses are engaged, plus the emotional connection
and the chemical connection and reactions that are that bonding, that cuddle hormone.
Yes,
it is something that you want to be able to experience a very full experience. You just can't do it with porn. No. It's just not going to happen the way that you would with your partner. And I think that a lot of people are skipping a lot of steps and going straight for the climax or straight for that heightened arousal response because it's just easier.
It's easier.
It's easier to do it alone. Yeah. It's easier to have that release alone. Time-wise, we're all pressed for time at all times. And I know a lot of men who have created as part of their routine, whether it's morning, part of their shower routine, or part of their falling asleep routine. It's something that has become very habitual. And in future episodes in our next series, we're going to be talking about sexual dysfunction. And I personally think that they're training their bodies to react so quickly, and then they wonder what happens when they're with someone and they can't perform the way that they'd like.
Right, I agree with you.
So those are the problematic sexual behaviors. If you're not experiencing any issues with this, then all of this is
don't make a problem where there's no problem.
Don't make a problem where there's no problem. Exactly. For women who are masturbating maybe too often with Bob's battery-operated boyfriends, I do also encourage them to not always use something that's vibrating.
It takes a little more time. But
it takes a little bit more time. It takes a little bit more fantasy and focus. But you can also train your bodies to only respond to a vibration that, I'm sorry, but men just aren't capable of replicating, and women aren't either. So we'd like to hear your comments on this topic. It's a controversial topic, so go ahead and get out there, #HotSeat. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear what your thoughts are, and hopefully you'll join us for our next episode.
Thanks.